All right, so Dewey had just been talking about how we don't deal with isolated objects, but we deal with whole situations, with environments within which we pick out objects as being important for this or that reason, but we're not just dealing with objects in isolation, but within a total environment. And he's going to expand on that in this next section that we're going to look at, which is about the concept of a situation. And this is I believe I've mentioned before that this is a very important concept in Dewey's writing. He's discussed it in many places, but this is a good compact discussion of situation within Dewey. So this is a good couple of pages to look at if you want to understand that concept and why it's so important. So let's begin here. He says, recurring to the main topic, it is to be remarked that a situation is a whole in virtue of its immediately pervasive quality. And I think we've seen this term quality before, but this is going to be really an important discussion of this term quality in relation to situation. And I've written and made other videos on this topic, which you can check out. But yeah, so let's see what he says here about quality. So when we describe it from the psychological side, we have to say that the situation as a qualitative whole is sensed or felt. So you can think of the quality of a situation as how that situation feels, as the kind of feeling that it gives you, the kind of feeling that arises in different situations. Such an expression is, however, valuable only as it is taken negatively to indicate that it is not, as such, an object in discourse. So why he says, felt or sensed is that it's not something that can be talked about exactly. So going on, stating that it is felt is wholly misleading if it gives the impression that the situation is a feeling or an emotion or anything mentalistic. So it's not just a feeling. It's not just something subjective, just something in your mind. On the contrary, feeling, sensation, and emotion have themselves to be identified and described in terms of the immediate presence of a total qualitative situation. So we can say that a situation has kind of a whole sensed quality to it, gives a kind of feeling. But on the other hand, particular feelings, particular sensations, and emotions are only identifiable in terms of the whole situation, a total qualitative situation. And continuing on, he says the pervasively qualitative is not only that which binds all constituents into a whole, but it is also unique. It constitutes in each situation an individual situation, indivisible and unduplicable. So each situation is different, right? In your life, no two situations are ever exactly the same. And there's something that distinguishes each situation from another situation, however similar it might be, and that's going to be its unique quality, its pervasive quality, which is something that we don't really talk about, but we sense or feel. I mean, he'll say in what sense we can talk about it, but in any case, it cannot be fully captured in words, but it is something that is sensed or felt as something pervading a situation, marking it off as different from other situations, right? There's always change, always difference. No two situations are exactly the same. At the very least, we have changed, creating a change in the quality of the situation, since we are one factor in the situation. Let's go on. Distinctions and relations are instituted within a situation. They are recurrent and repeatable in different situations. So distinctions that we make between this and that object, between the plate and the table, are distinctions within a situation, and you can find those distinctions in many different situations, right? Any situation where there's a table and a plate or a chair, right? You'll have these similar relations, these similar distinctions among objects, but these are kind of general or generic distinctions. But the situation itself will not repeat. And where are we? Let's see. So discourse that is not controlled by reference to a situation is not discourse, but a meaningless jumble, just as a mass of pied type is not a font, much less a sentence. So words that are not, this is controlled in terms of a situation, are just, as he says, a meaningless jumble. So it's like if you take a bunch of letters, they don't really create a font, much less a sentence, just a jumble of stuff. I don't want to say too much about this, but this is interesting nowadays in light of large language model artificial intelligences, right? Which do not have a universe of experience. They just have well, not really a universe of discourse, but they kind of simulate discourse. So in terms of them, like from their perspective, from the AI's perspective, it's, we might suppose, a meaningless jumble, right? It's just moving around characters, moving around, I don't even know, marks or counters in their program, in the program, which don't have any meaning because there's no experience tied to those marks, those distinctions in their algorithm. Yeah, so a meaningless jumble. A universe of experience is the precondition of a universe of discourse. So having something, having experience is the foundation for being able to talk about something in language. Without its controlling presence, there is no way to determine the relevancy, weight, or coherence of any designated distinction or relation. So experience tells us what's important, or the background of experience, right? The quality of a situation is how we know what's important, how we make distinctions within a situation is due to this pervasive quality that is brought out in our interaction with the world around us in particular contexts. The universe of experience surrounds and regulates the universe of discourse, but never appears as such within the latter. So experience does not appear as such within discourse, is what he's saying, right? So words are words, experience is experience. We can use words, I think at some point he says this, we can use words to point to aspects of experience, but experience per se does not appear within discourse, within our conversations, for example. The conversation is an experience, but our experience is not within the language that can be used to point about it, describe it, and stuff like that. So the universe of experience surrounds and regulates the universe of discourse, but never appears as such within the latter. Also, the question of motivation is kind of what he's getting at here. I don't think he really uses the word motivation. I think other philosophers and psychologists would maybe prefer to talk about motivation, right? Motivation is kind of regulating discourse. Why do we talk about this as opposed to that, right? There's some kind of motivational quality there that selects what we end up talking about. It may be objected that what was previously said contradicts this statement. For we have been discoursing about universes of experience and situations, so that the latter have been brought within the domain of symbols. So he's saying, yeah, okay, so, well, we've been discoursing about experience, have we not? But the objection, he says, when examined, serves to elicit an important consideration. It is a commonplace that a universe of discourse cannot be a term or element within itself. Well, let's continue. So one universe of discourse may, however, be a term of discourse within another universe. The same principle applies in the case of universes of experience. There's kind of a meta issue here, right? You can have a conversation, and you could have a conversation about your conversation, but then you've switched into another kind of universe of discourse. You're now in like a meta conversation, right? When you have a conversation about the conversation you're having, or we're having, you've kind of switched into another thing. And a similar thing happens with experience. Elsewhere, Dewey will talk about reflective experience. So reflecting on experience is, creating a new universe of experience. So reflecting on kind of primary experience creates a new universe of discourse. A new universe of experience, or usually reflective experience is actually discursive or talking about experience. But in any case, a universe of experience can be a part of another universe of experience, but not its own, part of its own universe of experience. And similarly with discourse, a universe of discourse can be part of another universe of discourse, but not part of its own universe. So when you go meta, it's like you're creating another universe. Continuing on, the reader, whether he agrees or not with what has been said, whether he understands it or not, has, as he reads the above passages, a uniquely qualified, experienced situation. And his reflective understanding of what is said is controlled by the nature of the immediate situation. So like, whether or not you understand what I just said, you're having a unique experience in understanding it or not understanding it. And your understanding of it is controlled by the nature of the situation. One cannot decline to have a situation, right? We cannot escape a situation of some kind, of any kind, right? We're always having a situation. We cannot decline to have a situation, for that is equivalent to having no experience, not even one of disagreement, and we can't have no experience. I mean, you can be totally unconscious, but then you don't know that you're not having an experience, right? To know that to quote unquote, know that you're having an experience would be to have an experience, which is a weird contradiction, right? To know that you're not having experience would itself be an experience, if that were possible. The most that can be refused or declined is the having of that specific situation in which there is reflective recognition, discourse, of the presence of former situations of the kind stated. So you can refuse to reflect on something, but you can't refuse to have experience, to be in a situation, have a situation, as Dewey sometimes says. The very declination is nevertheless identical with initiation of another encompassing qualitative experience as a unique whole. So you can refuse a specific situation, but this is to put yourself in a new situation. In other words, it would be a contradiction if I attempted to demonstrate by means of discourse the existence of universes of experience. So you can't really prove this or that universe of experience by discourse, but continuing on, it is not a contradiction by means of discourse to invite the reader to have for himself that kind of an immediately experienced situation in which the presence of a situation as a universe of experience is seen to be the encompassing and regulating condition of all discourse. So this is a tricky thing, right? Because we can't really, you can't exactly prove just with words, just with, logical symbols or something, the existence of a universe of experience, but you can invite people to think about and observe their own situation, right? To try to look for themselves, experience for themselves how their discourse and other behaviors are regulated by the all-encompassing situation that they are in. There is another difficulty going on. There's another difficulty in grasping the meaning of what has been said. It concerns the use of the word quality. So Dewey has been defining a situation by its pervasive quality, its pervasive qualitative something or other. So this is a tricky word also, right? Because quality has different meanings. But this is an important use of the word in Dewey's writing, and you find this in some other authors as well. Suzanne Langer uses quality in a somewhat similar way, and other writers around this time, early 20th century. So not only Dewey, but you see this in some other writers. So it's good to have a sense of the different uses of the word quality. The word is usually associated with something specific, like red, hard, sweet. That is, with distinctions made within a total experience. These would be what are sometimes what kind of traditionally have been called primary and secondary qualities. Red, hard, sweet. Red and sweet would be secondary qualities. What we perceive through vision and hearing. And then hard would be a primary quality. These are usually touch qualities. Things like motion and number and texture and things like that would be primary qualities. And these are not what Dewey is talking about. These are specific distinctions within the total situation. So there's another sense of quality that we're going to get into. And he writes, the intended contrasting meaning may be suggested, although not adequately exemplified, by considering such qualities as are designated by the terms distressing, perplexing, cheerful, disconsolate. Right? These are feeling words, you may have noticed, which are different than something like red or hard or fast or slow or sweet or bitter, in terms of taste rather than feeling. For these words like distressing, perplexing, and so on, these words do not designate specific qualities in the way in which hard, say, designates a particular quality of a rock. For such qualities permeate and color all the objects and events that are involved in an experience. Well, kind of like the mood that you have in a particular situation tends to color everything in that situation. When you are depressed, right? Everything is seen in a depressing light. When you're ecstatic, everything around you has a more ecstatic quality. The phrase tertiary qualities, happily introduced by Santayana, does not refer to a third quality, like in kind to the primary and secondary qualities of Locke, and merely happening to differ in content. For a tertiary quality qualifies all the constituents to which it applies in thoroughgoing fashion. Right? So I mentioned earlier when he introduced this topic about, I mentioned the primary and secondary qualities. So you also have this term tertiary qualities. Dewey says introduced by Santayana, another philosopher at this time. And Dewey knew Santayana's work well. Santayana knew Dewey's work. But this concept of tertiary quality, it's not a specific distinction in a situation. It's the pervading quality of the situation as such. And a couple more paragraphs. So continuing on about the term quality. Probably the meaning of quality, he says, in the sense in which quality is said to pervade all elements and relations that are or can be instituted in discourse, and thereby to constitute them an individual whole, can be most readily apprehended by referring to the aesthetic use of the word. So he's trying to, bring out more, make more apparent the meaning of the word quality, although that sentence maybe did not help so much. But yeah, quality in the sense of what pervades all elements and relations that could be talked about, that appear in a situation and could appear in a universe of discourse. And he's going to bring this out by talking about art, as he has before, when in other writings when he discusses quality, he often refers to art just to make his point. But that's not only where you find quality in the sense that is relevant here. So let's go on to that. So Dewey says, a painting is said to have quality, or a particular painting to have a Titian or Rembrandt quality. The word thus used most certainly does not refer to any particular line, color, or part of the painting. So when you say that this painting has a Rembrandt quality, you're not talking about just a color, a patch of color, or a line within the painting. It's something about the painting as a whole, right? It is something that affects and modifies all the constituents of the picture and all their relations. It is not anything that can be expressed in words, for it is something that must be had. So you have the quality. You can't translate it without remainder into language. It's something that must be had, although you can use words to point to it, as he says. Discourse may, he says, point out the qualities, lines, and relations by means of which pervasive and unifying quality is achieved. So you can kind of guide people's experience so that they have an experience of that quality. Using language, right? You can use words to guide experience, but the words themselves do not give the experience. The experience is not in the words. The words point to it, but they don't have it. But so far as this discourse is separated from having the immediate total experience, a reflective object takes the place of an aesthetic one. Right? So talking about the experience gives you a reflective object, makes the experience an object reflected on rather than an experience had in an aesthetic sense. Aesthetic experience, in its emphatic sense, is mentioned as a way of calling attention to situations and universes of experience. So one way to think about this universe of experience is to think about an aesthetic experience, your experience of attending to and appreciating a particular painting, piece of music, whatever. That's one kind of universe of experience. And when you talk about that experience, you're no longer having that experience, but you're having a new kind of reflective experience about that other experience. The intended force of the illustration would be lost if aesthetic experience as such were supposed to exhaust the scope and significance of a situation. So situations are not only aesthetic, right? As has been said, a qualitative and qualifying situation is present as the background and the control of every experience. So what makes experience an experience is that it is a situation which is different from other situations, marked off by its particular pervading quality. It was for a similar reason that it was earlier stated that reference to tertiary qualities was not adequately exemplary, for such qualities as are designated by distressing, cheerful, etc. are general, while the quality of distress and cheer that mark an existent situation is not general, but is unique and inexpressible in words. This is an important point. So we might describe the quality of a situation as being distressing or cheerful or boring or joyful. But that doesn't capture the uniqueness of that particular distressing, etc. situation, right? When we label something with a word, that's making it general, right? Giving a general, pointing to its general quality. And maybe that's helpful for a person you're talking to. Like this situation is distressing. That gives them a clue as to what the situation is like for you, but it doesn't give them the specific quality that the situation has for you as experienced as opposed to talked about. So you have to be careful with this idea of tertiary qualities is the point, right? There's a difference between labeling a situation as having this or that quality and experiencing the situation. And let's see, I think there's one more paragraph. Where are we? Yeah, last paragraph for the moment. So I give one further illustration from a different angle of approach. It is more or less a commonplace that it is possible to carry on observations that amass facts tirelessly, and yet the observed facts lead nowhere. So you can make various observations of what's around you at the moment, but unless this is guided by, again, I would maybe want to use the word motivation, the pervading, maybe that's a little bit too subjective for Dewey here, but kind of the motivational quality of a situation. If your observations are not tied into that motivational quality of the situation, or that emotional quality, kind of that feeling quality of the situation, there's nothing tying these facts together. They're just isolated facts, and it doesn't do anything to help you in that situation. But it's a possibility, I suppose. You could just, as a kind of thought experiment or exercise, you could just list the primary and secondary qualities in your situation, all the objects in your situation, and this could go on indefinitely. But for what purpose, right? On the other hand, it is possible to have the work of observation so controlled by a conceptual framework fixed in advance that the very things which are genuinely decisive in the problem at hand and its solution are completely overlooked. Right? So this is the problem of bringing a fixed theory to a situation. Right? We see this sometimes in politics, where you might think that everything is at bottom a racial issue or a class issue, and try to fix a situation by dealing with those aspects, with the racial or the class aspects, whereas it might be something else. It might be gender, it might be a combination of things that are creating problems in a situation. And if you're always focused on that one thing, whether it's race or class or gender or any number of other things, then you might miss what is actually what are actually the most important factors in the situation. So this is kind of the opposite, but also kind of similar problem of just trying to stick to the facts without without attention to the specific quality of the situation. But yeah, in this kind of theory, this top-down theory approach, everything is forced into the predetermined conceptual and theoretical scheme. The way and the only way to escape these two evils, kind of the empirical and the kind of the strongly empirical approach, just the facts, just try to pick out the very specific facts in a situation, and the more rationalistic approach, try to fit everything into your theory or be kind of blinded by your theory. These two, the way to escape these two evils is sensitivity to the quality of a situation as a whole. Try to experience the situation as a whole. What is its pervading quality? In ordinary language, a problem must be felt before it can be stated. So we must experience it before we try to talk about it. If the unique quality of the situation is had immediately, then there is something that regulates the selection and the weighing of observed facts and their conceptual ordering. So first try to experience the situation fully and allow that the quality of the situation to guide your observation and the theoretical approach you bring to it, the concepts you use to order those facts. But you need to be sensitive to the situation as a whole. And this is a difficult thing, of course. Okay, we will end here for now and pick up the discussion next time.